I'm live. Apparently, YouTube says I'm live. So hopefully they're not telling a fib. Happy Tuesday as I'm recording this or streaming this, I suppose. Somebody's recording it somewhere up in the ether because they're recording it. This weekend, I was at Page, the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo. It's the second one. Unfortunately, I didn't get to stay very long. If you saw my community post on the main channel, you'll notice I did manage to run into Professor Dungeon Master of Dungeon Craft only for a minute. It wasn't quite. I was kind of trying to, he is a much bigger channel than I am, but I wasn't going there. I think he kind of approached it like I was coming at him because they have an autograph kind of like, hey, take a picture of me area. And he was signed up for an hour. And at one point I was walking by, my daughter was with me. And I just noticed he was there. And I think some couple was finishing up with them and nobody else was around. So I thought, oh, this is my chance to go say hi. But I think in doing it in that way, I think he thought I was kind of like coming like for an autograph or something. And not that I would be averse to that, but I was more like, hey, he was wanting to say hi and whatever. I was coming in more like a peer, and I think he thought I was coming kind of as a fan, which is fine. He is much bigger than I am. To him, I am but nothing, compared to his success. But I did get to meet him, say hi. I saw some other folks there. I just didn't have a chance to run into. They were kind of doing stuff when I noticed them. Bob World Builder was around, and they were also doing a bunch of panels and stuff. Bob World Builder, I noticed. I guess what's his name? Baron. I forget his channel's name, but he's someone. Actually, I did a video. I did a video where I looked at because somebody had sent me his video about what was it about building encounters. So I looked at his video. He was there. I think Kelsey Dion was around, but I didn't see her. I don't know what. I guess I'm not really. I mean, I know what she looks like. I've seen her on videos, but I didn't notice her there. Page, which is what they call it for short. So this is Page 2, Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, second one. It's outside Philadelphia. As the name suggests, Philadelphia. It's kind of outside Philadelphia, but it's in kind of the greater Philadelphia area, much like, the New York Jets don't actually play in New York City. They play in New Jersey kind of thing. So it's not quite, I don't think it's in Philadelphia proper, but I think if you're in Philadelphia, it's like on the outskirts of the city. And of course, if you're not in Philadelphia, then what the heck does it matter? It's not that hard to get to. Philadelphia is kind of nice from the New York, for me as kind of New York person, because it's not terribly far. Even going to Page, it was maybe about 2 hours. 2 hours plus minus a couple of minutes maybe to get to. I think we might have even gotten there under 2 hours, maybe even going both ways. So for kind of a thing like that, it's pretty doable. And that's what's nice about PAX. Even though I have been staying overnight in Philly, if I needed to, I could come back and forth in a day. I only went for the day with my daughter, but we were able to kind of come back and forth in a day, and it wasn't bad. Now there were some issues which really were solvable. I just didn't. I'm not great at some of this. Probably a lot of it's kind of planning things, and so something I didn't really think about was kind of food. I mean, we had some snacks for the car, but we kind of left at a time that when we arrived at Page, almost immediately my daughter's like, "I'm hungry. Can we get some to eat?" And they had some food there. Maybe I should go over first kind of the con. It's in a center. I don't know if that's the right word. It's basically in a dedicated exposition center. That's not even the right word. There's a building, the building where it's housed. It's kind of in a sort of a strip mall-y sort of area, again, like right outside suburban Philadelphia. And in this strip mall area, they have kind of this large building, which it's not like I want to say it's an exposition center, but I depending on what you feel like you might picture in your brain, you probably might not be getting the best idea of what this is. Hey, Ian, because it's not like the Javits Center in New York City, or it's not like the Philly, the center, the convention center where PAX is. It's not like the one in Boston. I guess it's not a convention center, if you will. I don't even know how to explain it, because really what this building is, it's like they took a big I think it's a single story building, kind of a big block, and then they just cut it into some pieces. And so each one of these halls, which is one of these big, right? If you imagine they took, and I don't know, I don't think it is actually a perfect rectangle, but let's just say it is, right? You took this big rectangle and you plopped it down. Maybe it's a couple of blocks, New York City blocks, long or wide, whatever. And then you say, okay, we're going to cut that. We cut this thing into, say, 6 pieces, right? Well, the 3 year chop, chop, chop. So you can have in these each space 3 of these, what are 6 of whatever, however many spaces there are. I think might have been, I know there was like hall A, B, C, D, at least 4 spaces, might have been 6. Each one of these little blocks is, I think it's fairly self-contained, or I think it can be really completely self-contained. Certainly, I couldn't hear anything from any others of the halls, and the page was inside one of these blob halls. Boom. So the good thing about that is you're not in. There was a PAX. One of the years at PAX, there was a teachers conference at the convention center and PAX at the same time. And there were some areas, depending on which doorway you were going into and out of, where you had to kind of crisscross through. Like the teachers are here, and if you go one direction on thing, you're going into teacher stuff. You go their direction, going to PAX, and they had to have signs saying, like, hey, teachers go this way, PAX go that way. This a benefit is once you're at hall, whatever, where the page is, it's like you're there in it. Now the downside to the space is they didn't have, there's no dedicated, unlike a convention center, I don't think there's no dedicated food. So, even though it's not great, right, when you're at a convention center like the Javits in New York City, or the one in Philly, the convention center, or in Boston, or the other ones, any other ones you've been to, usually they've got like stadiums, they have Aramark or one of these big kind of Acme food vendors that's got, the crappy hot dogs and crappy chicken tenders and crappy whatever that's there. But at least they're there, and it's, you can do it. They had one food vendor at the inside their area page, but there's no real, I don't think there was any kitchen or anything. But when I looked, I just saw that they had like a food heater, and they had stuff just sitting under the red light. Oh, it's under the hot lamp. And so my daughter, when we get there, she's like, oh yeah, like I didn't want to leave right away, but when my daughter's like, oh, I'm kind of hungry, and we just kind of done this tour, I'm looking at it like, well, do I want to sit there and spend, I don't know, $7 on some, some French fries and just on the fry, whatever, like, oh, because she was, "Ah, can I have some French fries?" I mean, she's 10. Heck, I love French fries, and I'm way beyond 10. She's like, well, can I have this, that? And I'm looking at it like, I don't know. I mean, okay, so the benefit is if we eat this thing, we will be here, but like, it's not good. Like, I'm looking like, this is not good. And if I feel like if we go outside, maybe we could pay the same amount, or maybe even a little bit less, or even if we paid a little bit more and get some kind of real food. Now, I don't know if it's a limitation of the space or whoever they teamed up with. I don't know the ins and outs. And maybe they did have a kitchen back there. I didn't see it, but I saw that kind of hot lamp sort of cabinet, and I said, I don't know. Not really into the hot lamp / cabinet. But what that meant was we ended up leaving, and then we went to a restaurant that was really close. I forget it was called PJ something. It was not PJ Clark, but PJ something. And it was a big kind of sports bar. But there was everybody, it seemed like everybody from all the different hall areas, because there was some kind of cheerleading thing that I think that was also going on. There was other multiple things going on at once, and I think a lot of people were going to this particular restaurant because it was pretty much, it was close. If you picture where this place is like one of those kind of really big strip mall's not even the right word, like really big shopping centers where you have these kind of big shops, and they're all kind of interconnected via parking lots and internal roads, but they're not necessarily that close to each other if you're walking and it was freezing out. So, you could walk from the convention center to this food place that's probably a 10-minute walk, and it's freezing, or you can drive there and be there in a minute, whatever, 2 minutes, pretty darn quick. You're just kind of zipping around these different parking lots. There's a couple of big box stores. It's like, big box store here, big box store here, this expo hall piece, another thing, and then just, parking lots and kind of things in between them. So by the time we drove over there, then we had to wait for a table, and then we ate, and we came back. It was kind of like we lost a bit of time. And so I didn't have as much time to kind of walk around and try to run into people, and I think that our timing was poor. We didn't leave super early, so we got there kind of around like 11, and we're walking around. And I think the biggest issue, because I know they want to do more. So I talked to a couple people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they're going to be bigger. They want to maybe do the entire expo thing, which is a lot, right? They already had stuff split. That's the other part of it. The other piece of it is apparently some stuff was at some hotels that were nearby, but I wasn't staying, and I was with I'm with my daughter, and like I'm just trying to I'm going to run around the hotel, and maybe if I was by myself, I might have run by the hotel just to kind of check it out. But I think it was more for gaming, and I think someone was saying that those special sessions, because I think you could pay to play with some of the celebrities who were there, kind of thing. And so I don't know if even there was even a way to get in there. What it just didn't make sense. I didn't think for the amount of time I was spending to try to jump to the other spot. So in the expo hall itself, lots of games. They had a vendor area. They had the one food thing. But I think a lot of people were just going out because it just didn't look very enticing. And like I said, I think maybe in the future get something a little bit, maybe they could work on that part of it. And so that was cool. Ran into some folks that I know from. It's funny, kind of that crew you run into from other folks you see kind of at other cons around. So ran into those folks. Did the thing with Professor Dungeon Master. Didn't have a chance to talk to those other cats, but saw them around. I played in one game with my daughter, Castles and Crusades, Troll Lord Games. Shout out to Chuck, who I wish I got his last name. Chuck at Troll Lord Games, who ran us through a kind of a kid friendly little adventure, which was a lot of fun. My daughter enjoyed it a lot. She played we were all playing animals, kind of anthropomorphic animals. I was a frog druid. My daughter was what was she? She was a mouse fighter. There was another lady who was a rabbit rogue, so we're like a rabbit thief, and then another kid that might have been a couple years older than my daughter, so maybe in that 12 to 14 range, maybe a little bit. I don't know, maybe even less than that. I'm not sure exactly. He played a wizard who was what? What was his animal? Oh, a turtle. Played a turtle wizard. So we had a turtle wizard, a rabbit rogue, a mouse fighter, and a frog wizard. And the adventure we went on was they were part of a little village, and it's cute. He had a little whiteboard. These whiteboards. Hold on a minute. Where's mine? I think I mentioned this before. I use this at Claricon. It's kind of, I'm sure I'd love to get one that's a little bit better, because it's really just kind of cardboard with whatever this laminate piece on, and then around it. I bought it just on the whim for Claricon, and to use a Claricon, and it works really well. And they're just great because you can just write a bunch of stuff on there. You don't have to, you can wipe it off, so you can reuse it a bunch. It doesn't have any grids or anything. You could probably, if you wanted to put some kind of dot grid on there to help, I'm sure you could fix one up that way, but I just kind of like it's nice. And he just drew on there basically a little map of just to kind of give it, and it was just super simple, like, oh, here's some I don't know, water or something, here's your thing, there's some forest, there's a swamp, and there's kind of mountains, like, right, just to give us like, okay, here's where we are, sort of thing. So our little village, I guess, has a festival, and we were helping to set up for the festival, and of course somebody runs in and says, help, somebody's stolen my honey, and I need the honey to make the famous honey cakes for the festival. So will you please track down who stole the honey? So that was our mission. Who stole the honey? That's the adventure. And it was fun because it was a lot of it. It was interesting was we were playing. I guess we were playing Castles and Crusades. The Chuck was. I wish I kind of had a chance to talk to Chuck. He was because the way he was presenting it like we were playing kind of a rules light version of Castles and Crusades. And somewhere I might have my character sheet, which was, I think, just a straight up Castles and Crusades character sheet. They were all pre-gens. But he kept talking about kind of like how we're not gonna, just the way he was running the game. He's running a very simplified game, which was certainly true. And we did not fight anything in the game, and it was Maybe I would have liked to, though. I think it's more for the kids. Cast a spell or just use some kind of ability to do something, but there wasn't any of it, and maybe that's just because the way we processed it and did it. But it was a lot of investigation. It was let's we're go to the scene of the crime. We talk to the person there. We get up on the trail. We get to the kind of next area, and there was a lot of this. I think it's one of the things that I think comes up fairly often, right? Oh, so and so took it from me. No, this happened, right? We're kind of all this list of people and sort of the suspects, or they came through here, but then this happened to me, and can you help me with this? And it kept leading us on and on and on and on down the line till we end up, going, from the to the beekeeper's house where the honey was taken from. Then we followed that to a trail, and then we had to pick two ways in the trail, but I guess we picked the right one because we didn't have to come back and pick the other one. Leads us to another thing, and then to like a bear, and then a serpent, and then some to wild bees, and then it might have been a badger in there, but there's a bear and there's a serpent. Finally, a troll. But we were able to basically talk it all out. We talked out with each one. We posed. This is my contribution. We posed as honey inspectors, which I guess was funny because Chuck said he'd been, this was his last game of the day. I don't know how many times he'd run it at the con and before him, but apparently no one else had used the ruse or the ploy of posing as honey inspectors before. So that my great contribution was like, yeah, we're honey inspectors, come to check out the honey. And it was a lot of fun. And even though we didn't actually do any combat, which I'm happy for, but I think, like I said, I don't care about the combat part. I don't know if as a kid, like I'm like, my daughter was certainly happy with it. She didn't say like, oh, I didn't get to do any fighter things, right? And the boy playing the wizard was not bummed out that he didn't cast any spells. But I might have. I know I looked at my spell list a little bit, but there was just, unfortunately, the spells that I saw were very kind of, not that they're bad. Let me see if I can find my sheet. Hold on. They're not bad by any means. Hold on. Is my sheet? Where is my... Oh, you know what? Hold on a second. All right. Let me see if I can get this out of here. If I did put it away, which I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So the spells I had were, this is the other, just not Chuck's fault per se, but if you look at this list, you might see them in there. The spells got cut off. Actually, let me see if I can do this another way. The spells, they got cut. Actually, no, there's not another way I can do it at the moment. Spells got cut off. Now I'm pretty sure I can figure out what they mean. We've got 0 level spells, and I can see it says 8 water, which I'm guessing either I can safely eat water if that's a spell, or it's create water. And one that's endure elemur, so I write endure elements. I'm guessing that's it. And then light. And then first level spells actually don't get cut off. I have entangle, goodberry, obscuring mists, which are all fine. They're all fine spells, but they're like, what am I going to do with create water? Maybe there would have been a circumstance. It would have been very cool if it had come up when someone's like, oh man, I really need to drink a fresh water. And I can go, create water. But, it didn't come out. And then endure elements. There wasn't really anything elemental going on. I have to read the spell. I think it's mostly, I don't know if it's like, we're going over lava. I don't remember what endure elements allows me to endure if it's mostly combat focused. Light, we didn't end up needing. We did go into caves, but he didn't play up the light thing, so I didn't need that. And then entangle, we didn't get in any combat. Obscuring mists, we weren't trying to run from anything, so there's no reason to use obscuring mists. And then we weren't in a position where we were in somewhere to do anything. So goodberry, not very useful in that circumstance. And yeah, this is just right, castles and crusades. But Chuck did a really good job. it does bring me to what I think is the weakness of this spot. And hearing that they're going to just swallow up more of this expo hall, if that's their deal, it bums me out a little bit. Maybe not bums me out, but it definitely. I think what I would hope, or what I would like for them to do, is to figure out a way, if you're going to use those expo halls for a lot of the gaming, is to figure out a way to moderate the sound, because it's just, the sound is awful in there. They were doing things like, there was a mixture of, so they had some kind of areas, and I couldn't remember. Wasn't paying that much attention if they're how these walls are. But they had certain areas where it's like each hall kind of like is clipped a little bit, not totally. I don't know if you could close walls all the way to make even smaller spaces, but you kind of come into one area, and I guess maybe it's cut in two, basically. And the back area was where they had the vendors, and the front area they had some areas that they kind of fenced off with sort of half walls, or the walls, not walls going all the way up, but sort of barriers around, to make these places for having panels and discussions and those kinds of, which I really like. I really like those. But problem is you can't hear anybody. I mean, it's really hard to hear people. When I walked in, I come in and go to I walk around, and I see that Professor Dungeon Master is giving a talk in one of these closed off areas. And so I'm thinking, okay, let me stand here for a minute and see if I can hear what he's saying. He has a mic in his hand with some kind of portable sound system speaker thing next to him, and I cannot hear him, because the sound is just going up into the open space and just getting mixed around with everything else. I can't hear him. I mean, I can't hear even a little bit. I mean, I know he's talking. I can hear like, but it's like I can't hear him. Cannot be understood. There was another talk I went to a little bit from a group. I don't remember what their name is. It's like something of the Amber Dye, like Cult of the Amber Dye, Crusade of the Amber Dye. Wait a minute, was it here? Yeah, it's here, because they gave us a pamphlet talking about this idea of Order of the Amber Dye, talking about this marathon gaming. Order of the Amber Dye. I had not heard of them before, but they seemed cool. So we sat there for a little bit and listened to it. But it's really hard when you're hearing as much and sometimes more from something happening in the area on the other side of the partition than you are from what you're listening to. It's just hard. And then when we were playing the game, it's just, Chuck is having to really project really loudly. And I think when you have kids, like my daughter's kind of, she's only played one session with me before. She's not someone who's played a lot of games to this point. She's a little bit shy. She's a little bit, and then she can't, for Chuck to hear her, she has to really, really speak into it, which doesn't play into that kind of shy, like you're shy. And then the other have to go like really kind of pronounced, just makes it, or, he can't hear her, so she has to repeat. Oh, brother, more. Get off. She's got to repeat herself or move forward. And it just doesn't, for someone who's shy and already has to kind of almost steel herself to speak, then to have to kind of repeat yourself or project even more. Just, it doesn't make it as great an experience as it could be. So I wonder, well, if they make it bigger, add more. I mean, I guess on the one hand, you think, well, hopefully what they could do is have a whole area that's set up for expos or something, so they can kind of close it off more. I mean, not expos, I mean for kind of panels and whatnot, talks. They could close it off more, make it so you can actually hear them. Because they also had two areas. So, you have this open area, then they put up these partitions, and they have two, there could be talks going on. I don't know if they had too much overlap between them, but you kind of have those two, and then you have people gaming all around it, and it's cacophony. Just really hard to talk. And I guess I hope that if they expand it, that maybe if they keep using hotel, I don't know if they're going to keep having that hotel element, but have that hotel element, which is going to have rooms that are kind of conference rooms, that you could do talks in those kind of conference rooms areas that are more set up and be a little more isolated, so you can actually hear and appreciate them, and then have the gaming somewhere else. But even then I was thinking, like, if I'm going to, gaming in these huge rooms that have really poor sound, I mean, it's kind of a thing you have to deal with at cons. I don't know what cons that really have lucked into having really great sound isolation, but PAX Unplugged does a pretty good job just because some of the gaming areas, they're just in smaller, they're in those kind of conference rooms. So you have to fight with other sounds, but not the whole, almost seems like the whole con at once. Whereas in this expo hall kind of thing, because there's just one giant chamber that has no sound proofing or anything in it. Anyway, it's just too much. Hey, Brian. But I'm happy that I went. I'm happy that I went. Thanks so much for those guys for, I reached out to them to kind of see if I get a press pass. They did. The pass for my daughter was only like a couple of bucks, which would have worked for all 3 days for her. Obviously, we only used the kind of one for a few hours, but that was super nice. I did get a couple of T-shirts. Where are my T-shirts? Somewhere around here, I got a couple of T-shirts because they were selling last year's T-shirts for $5. So I got last year's and I got this year, so it can see me on the street and I can pretend I went to the first page. I'll definitely try to go back. I think it's it's going to be obviously the scheduling is not ideal just for me because I just feel like it's a lot coming off of, because I was thinking about it, I don't think of myself as a con person, but from September to December I go to a con every month, and I think September, October, November, like 4 months in a row I go to a con. I have a con at a couple of them. I almost, they're very close to me. They're very well, even PAX is kind of close, but it's like boom, 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 boom. And then, here comes Page right in, January, which is like wham. It's just feels like a lot. But it's close. It's certainly I could drive for a day. I mean, look, if I really wanted to, I could drive 2 days. It's not that much, not super horrible driving. The one thing that's nice is it's because it's not in downtown Philly. It's like free parking. There's plenty of space to park, plenty of places to drive. I think I might pick a food. I think there are a ton of food options. Not that that place was bad. It wasn't. It was fine. It's just that it's kind of right there, so that it was getting all the overflow or getting all the flow from all these different things. But it was a good time. Got to see Levi Combs and some other folks. It was nice to see him because he's someone I used to run into at these cons, and then I know he had some health issues and whatnot, so it was fun to see him out and about. I think that's all I got for that. Brian said, "Hey, Brian, Brian, that is, has begun their first attempt at a complicated paint by numbers of the Star Wars poster. Why does anybody do these? My daughter's got one of those, not a complicated Star Wars poster, but kind of a adult paint by number book, where it's kind of color by number. It seemed like a lot of fun, actually. My aunt had done some of those where it's kind of an artistic, kind of artistic paint by numbers. They're pretty neat. I remember feeling kind of, I guess when I was young, I felt pretty snooty about those. Like, why don't you just paint? It was kind of, my opinion was like, why are you painting by numbers? Why don't you just paint? But I think I appreciate it more now than I did then when I was being a snot. What I have here on screen now that I can finally get into it. So that was Page. Page was good. If you're in the area, I would say come along. I think most of the opinions of the folks I talked to were positive. I mean, it's always going to be kind of, Questing Beast was there. Justin Alexander was there. I didn't get a chance to talk to them or really see them. If you like those folks, you're going to like it. If you're someone that doesn't like those folks, you might say, why are they? Oh, those folks, right? And I've had my, I have mixed feelings on some of the things they've done, but I don't have any ill will towards any of those folks. They're there. Kelsey Dion was there, but I didn't get to see her. So it's one of those things. I think like, hey, it still seems like a con that's very much games with a few things, which I like. You're playing like, it's not the marketing heavy, which I think, I don't know. I feel like PAX is still, you could play so many games at PAX, but there is a lot of the kind of marketing things. And when I think of the Comic Cons, I feel like they've gone, to me anyway, too far into like, you're just here to consume marketing. And that's kind of the con. I'm sure it's not that, but that's just how it feels to me. Page is still small enough, though. I think it sounds like they really want to ramp it up, and we'll see how that goes. But it's like, yeah, you come there, play games. It's just unfortunate that, and again, this is probably not unusual to a lot of cons, but the where you actually play the games, it's just not ideal maybe as I hope it could be. Maybe there are ways to fix it. Maybe there aren't, because just you're playing in these giant halls that are just huge boxes. And yeah, sound is going to do what sound does. Brian asked, Justin, quote unquote, invented dungeon design, Alexander. Yep, he was there. Yeah, and they did a kind of a panel with, I guess, the four of them. I only saw kind of part of one panel on that Order of the Amber Dies panel, and I couldn't. Just again, bad timing. I think one of those. I would have watched the panel, just curiosity, interest, whatnot. See what people are saying. But the timing was bad. I think that happened during that hour or so when we were at lunch. And then we bounced around a little bit, said hi to some folks, then did our game, and then we hit the road. Brian says, I wonder if you could have set of headphones and mics all linked to each other so the group could hear each other. Yeah, I don't know. There were some people that had like a mic set up at their table, but then it's just, you're just projecting even more. It's just kind of like you have to keep getting louder and louder. Or yeah, you have to have some weird, like I was thinking, could you use kind of tents or, pavilions? Could you get some kind of almost outdoor pavilions and just put them down and just do something at least to just some kind of something? I'm not sure. Or, I don't know if there's different ways to customize the space more. This feels very much like kind of a local kind of con, which is nice. It's good, but there's not a lot. They don't have a lot of stuff, right? They haven't, I think that's something that I hope that as they get bigger, they'll figure those things out. Because it's great to get bigger and have more people, and that's awesome. Hopefully they're, I guess, investing in infrastructure. You got invest in things to make the experience good, or utilize spaces that already have that. And that's why I think if you're doing something, we're doing some stuff in hotels and some stuff in this expo hall, having some of the hotels, those convention or those conference areas that are sort of made to give talks in, put the talks in there, great. And then at least that eliminates one part. Okay, we're putting the talks in convention hall, convention room A, B, and C at the local Hyatt or wherever they are. Okay, great. Then that's over there. And then maybe you can think about putting up partitions, or I don't know, something with the main thing, or I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do it. But unfortunately, the one problem with that, or I would say issue with that hall, is it's just these big, it's just big, huge ceilings, just big open block, and just all the sound just ping-ponging around. And I think some of the other things that were in there, I think it was some kind of, I don't know if it was cheerleading, something to do with cheer or something of that nature. Because when we first got there, I drove to the wrong side of this big building, and it's cut up into these areas. So it was like, oh, here's hall A and B. Drive over there, and we just see all these families and lots of these teenage girls coming out with like pom-poms in their backpacks and whatever. Like, oh, I don't think this is where we're going. I'm like, yeah, I don't think. My daughter's like, I think we're on the wrong side. I said, yeah, I think you're right. But that kind of expo where they're doing something like that doesn't require a whole bunch of people talk. Like the thing is, like role playing, or I guess board games, be something where you have all these little pods trying to communicate with each other, as opposed to basically one giant thing happening in the space, like you might if you had a big state. You know what I mean? It's just the needs are different, and unfortunately, they just don't make spaces for what the ideal conditions for a role playing game. So I know it's just about, well, how can you mitigate it to maybe make it less terrible? And hopefully they try to figure that out, because it just makes it a little bit less when you can't hear anything when you're in the back of a thing. And I'm literally like, when I say in the back of this little area where I'm trying to listen to Professor Dungeon Master, I'm not more than 20 feet away from him. I'm close. There's just 4 rows of chairs or 3 rows of chairs, and then, but just kind of open sort of bullpen kind of thing. And I'm right there, and I can't hear. I cannot understand what he's saying. So it's kind of it's not a great experience for that, unfortunately. Rob says our cons mainly just have people playing games. That works. Yeah, I like the talks, and if you can get people to come, I'm happy to give a talk. Not that anyone wants to hear from me, but I'm happy to give a talk. I think they're fun. I think they're interesting. I think you can really get a lot of ideas. Gives you a break from playing. just give you something else to do. I think it's I do appreciate them if you can get people to give them or do them. And I think it's a nice change of pace, and I think it means that people who have different interests can, I don't know. I just think it's that sort of idea exchange is fun and nice and kind of a change of pace. But I don't know. It just was a very unideal interface for that. Worse for that than for the gaming, because you can hear at the tables. It wasn't like I couldn't hear Chuck or anything, but Chuck really had to. We're all kind of projecting, and even at one point he came around, and we're playing at a table. It's like one of those round kind of poker tables, and he literally came around to get closer to the kids at one point to hear them, because it was just hard. The kids. It's hard for them to just push their voice happen, and their voice is out there. But these are all, they're growing leaps and bounds, and apparently as much. I didn't go to the first one, and apparently this is, at a much bigger attendance and everything from the first one. So they're going to keep, and apparently, like I said, they want to keep going bigger. But I hope they just don't expand, without a thought to let's make it, if we can, invest in making it kind of a really good, just I don't know, and as ideal an experience for the actual gaming and stuff as we can. I know it's an uphill battle, and I know that it's not like the sexy part of any of this stuff, but hopefully these kind of local, or I guess maybe even this would maybe call it regional cons, can really keep their center to like, yeah, what's our real here for? What are we really here for? What are we doing? What are we doing here? And what am I doing here? So I posted up to Patreon. I'm trying to put together. So I'm part of the thing I'm trying to do is kind of put together some kind of settings sort of material, some kind of like like Blackmore, not Blackmore. Well, not unlike Blackmore, but what am I thinking of? What's the hold on a minute. Let me find it. Let me go to drive through and find my. What am I talking about? What am I trying to say? No. Hold on a minute. Is it Blackmore? No, it's not called Blackmore. Black Marsh? Hold on a minute. What is it? Oh, Black Marsh. It is Black Marsh. So I want to do some things like kind of like Black Marsh. Let me I guess I'll just re-download it. I'm sure I have it here somewhere, but easier to just re-download it. Okay, I think you're probably seeing it here on the screen. I want to do something like, oh, that's just the castle though. Oh, sorry. Download the wrong thing. No, I want. Where is the actual PDF? Not the. Oh, there it is. I downloaded the. No. Wait a minute. Castle. I keep downloading. I keep downloading the maps. I don't want the maps. Is it this Rev 5 PDF? Is that it? Hold on a second. This is it. Okay. Okay. I know a lot of people think highly of Black Marsh. I think it's nice, and I want to do something like this, where I'm kind of giving some geographs some keys and some stuff, and probably not. Because does he have any? I don't think he does any dungeons in here. I think other than he's got the castle, which may even be more than I would want to do. But basically, kind of BYOD, bring your own castle, or bring your own dungeons rather, and something like that. And I know a lot of people like it, and I want to do one, but I have a specific kind of setting. That, and I know I'm probably making things difficult on myself. Like, why not just go with the kind of vanilla setting, and then you can just run from there? Yeah, but part of something that I think you always have to, you never want to give up is there something that's really driving you as a artist, creator, whatever? You don't want to abandon it. you can mitigate it. You want to mix it in, but I think you really start to get miserable. Like that's where misery sets in when you find yourself not being able to express the things you want to express because you want to do something, right? Even if it's something you love, like, oh, here, Todd, you can write books, but you're not going to be able to write books about adventures you like. You got to write these really prescribed adventures. I'd probably be like, oh, and maybe at first I'd be like, oh, that's fine, and then just I think there's been all this talk about D&D channels and all this stuff, and I think that's kind of what happens to folks is you just end up with like, I got to do it to do it, and I'm no longer really enjoying doing it, but I'm still doing it, and I don't want that to be. I'd rather put out something that maybe it's not as popular, probably won't be as popular as these things because I am putting more of and you don't have to use like this cosmology stuff I'm working on, but it's there and it does set it apart, I think, in a way that makes it a little bit more my own, and it also means that it's maybe not as applicable to some other things, but that's okay. So I'll just give it a run through, and I'm curious, and folks who are in here or later on, let me know, does this seem like enough, too much, not enough? That would be if if we want to use the chat, is this too much? Is this enough? So you can't do stream. I don't think you can do any. Oh, I could start a poll. Here we go. Let's see. I can add. All right. Oh, cool. Ooh, this is going to be good. All right. Let's see. Is this cosmology too much, not enough, or just right? Can I edit these? Yes, I can. Too much, not enough, just right. All right, look at that. All right, hopefully you're able to see a poll if you're here. I don't no idea if you're streaming this on a television or anything like that. I'm sorry, I do not know. If you happen to be in a watching this in a medium that allows it, go ahead and vote. All right, so let me go through the primer. So I'll just read it and then we can take it from there. So this is, I'm calling it, being creative, a cosmology primer, an abbreviated summary of what is believed by the wise to be the nature of the universe. First subheading, creation. Rob asks, does the cosmology impact play? I think it does. I mean, it's a difficult question. Let me go through it and then we can talk about it. All right. So first up, creation. Before the world as we know it was made, there was only the pure primordial essences of the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. As uncounted aeons passed, the elements commingled until a conflagration of creation was kindled. From these fires, the planes of reality were formed. Major planes, Arth. Yeah, Arth. The center of the center, locked within the material of Arth, are the last remnants of the pure fire of creation. All creatures born of the matter of Arth contain a fragment of this fire called either the spark or the soul. The nature of Arth is fundamentally rational. The Yond, a world of fluctuating, malleable reality that surrounds Arth. The Yond is contiguous with Arth and also surrounds it in every direction. The nature of the Yond is fundamentally irrational. The Yond itself, as well as the creatures birthed there, respond to the spark, and seek it out. The void, originally thought to simply be merely the absence created by the consumption of elements in the fires of creation, which now sounds really wordy to me, but we'll fix that later. It is now thought that within the void, a force named the Forlorn seeks to undo creation by extinguishing all sparks. The nature of the void is despair. And then we have the greater gods. Among the first creatures and the foremost of those creatures are those that are called the greater gods. There are 12 greater gods. The gods, perceiving the forlorn, put forth their power to protect the worlds of creation by surrounding them within a celestial sphere. Now, there's a little bit more on the spark. And again, I apologize. I've always been messing around with which parts I should have where. So I'm not order of some of these. I'm not certain about. The spark. The creatures born of the matter of Arth contain within them the spark, a tiny remnant flame of the fires of creation. This makes them unique of all the creatures known within the universe. Through the mind and spirit, the spark has the power to invigorate. Through hopelessness, fear, and corruption, the spark dies. And then we have magic. I'm going to change this name. There are two sorts of magic. The rarest is thaumaturgy. That's the one I'm going to change. That is what it is, but I don't want to use that word. Usually only gods and others of the eldest creatures in creation can work wonders, which is what thaumaturgy is, the working of wonders, and miracles. It requires sparks. Gods are able to harness sparks through the reverence and devotion given to them by creatures on earth. So I'm setting up your kind of, your pretty bog standard. Why do gods wish for devotion? It's because they're able to basically channel energy through that. So, well, let me wait until they get to the end. The more common magic is sorcery. Through sorcery, creatures directly draw on the raw fabric of the Yond and manifest it to produce charms, enchantments, and other spells or effects. So now we have something called Yonderkin. There is an infinite variety of beings birthed by the Yond. Collectively, they are referred to as Yonderkin. As a rule, Yonderkin are motivated entirely by passions, which, because they are born of Yond matter, run unchecked by intellect. They are generally mercurial by nature or in nature. And then weirds, when the greater gods bent their wills into the celestial sphere, they invested some of their power into another. The weirds were tasked with upholding the sanctity of Arth. The greater gods rendered them more powerful, wiser, and less volatile than their brethren. And then the last one I have here is boggarts. Before the celestial sphere could be sealed totally, the Forlorn was able to corrupt some weirds into serving the void. These are boggarts. Okay, so Rob wants to know, like, basically, does the cosmology impact play? If not, it is too much. I don't know how to respond to that. That's not a bad question, but what are we talking about play? So one of the reasons why I wanted to have this is because I'm not having like the Yond is my version of fairy or the Fae realm. So it working a little bit differently. There's a different relationship between fairy and these. I think that maybe it's not the bog standard, like, well, there's just Fae from the Fae plane and whatever. Like there is a specific relationship between that plane and the kind of Arth, which would basically be your prime material plane, that's different. So I don't want to since I want to have this different relationship, I think, I don't want to necessarily use the same words because I want to make sure I'm highlighting the differences that I have here. Does that difference affect play? Yes and no. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, I think in the, I think yes. I think it affects how adventures are, what your creatures you're interacting with, and how you're interacting with them. So I'd say on that hand, yes. But then also you could totally run stuff and not have that plane be a part of it. Though I guess I can I should probably explain more about kind of what's going on. So the idea here is you have this center, right? And then you have the kind of almost like it's really, because the Yond is kind of like a dreamscape. It's real but unreal in there, which is where everything kind of runs kind of amok in a sense over there. And they're sort of locked together, sort of like almost like if you had the egg and you have the yolk and then the albumin around it. That's and maybe I could use that sort of that might be a good kind of illustration, right? Kind of thing. The concept that I'm sort of going for here is that there are interactions between, and I'm just going to use humans, like for the Arthlings, between humans types. It's almost like in the sense like the never-ending story, right? What's happening in wherever the never-ending story takes place is the dreams and nightmares and all this stuff. That's kind of a bit of the relationship, that like what people feel, all these kind of human tragedies, human stories that are happening, all that emotion, all that stuff, that affects. There's some relation between that and the Yond. So that's communicating. So a lot of the kind of just natural creatures, and also the good ones, and then the good kind of more powerful ones, and the bad more powerful ones, they can interact with people through these things. Because the kind of stories that I'm going to be populating this with are kind of human stories, or human focus. It's going to be, and I think I know I pushed this out somewhere. Let me see if I can find it, because it might be a good. Where did I do? Let me see if I can remember what I called it. And then I could, yeah. So I where did I put this? I might have put this somewhere. Anyway, this idea was basically a hex. So but this is a good example of what I'm talking about. So this is a little, basically like a adventure hook. Essentially, it's kind of like a hex contents, but it's got a little bit more to it. But I called it the Ghouls of Cotsfeld. On the periphery of the village of Cotsfeld are a quilt of farmsteads. Fences of rough-hewn timber divide the garden plots and pastures between them. At the head of each, a single-story farmhouse of wattle and daub roofed with straw looks over their modest domain. So that's kind of the backdrop, right? Except one. At the edge of the patchwork of cleared and worked lands, a farmstead lies desecrated and broken. Its fencing collapsed, its garden trampled, its pasture land overgrown. Like the crumbling tombstone of a ransacked grave, the farmhouse lies broken, blackened, and partially collapsed. In the village proper, the farmers huddle in the alehouse of the widow Erfin and drink their ale with hands shaking from fear. Under the steepled beams of the temple of Dilatus, the local goddess of the harvest, the high priestess Orcasta looks for signs and portents. She sees nothing but darkness and blood. Behind the priestess, on 3 hastily constructed biers, are 3 corpses covered in shrouds of checked white and green linen. And so really the more important thing for our purposes is really this history. So there was this one I just wrote for kind of vanilla purposes, so it's not using my lingo, but basically a malevolent fairy named Yibrohim, posing as a traveling peddler, sold seeds to all the farms of Cotsfeld, save that of Madoc. Although a crop of singular abundance was promised, the results have been stunted and blighted. Farmer Madoc and his wife were blamed. Rumors whispered that they laid a curse upon the rest because they could not abide by the good fortune in which they had failed to partake. That they were childless added to the fell powers of their supposed envy. The truth is that the farmer and goodwife Madoc had wisely mistrusted the peddler and so refused to do commerce with them. Thus, their garden prospered while their neighbors failed. So basically, the idea here is that you really have human greed, and the fairy element is preying like these farmers who were just thinking amongst themselves in their darkest hearts that they didn't have enough and wanted more. That is almost like, in some way, that projected outwards, and here comes this being that then feeds on this negative emotion. Of course, there's the one good farmer who's like, nope, not interested, and so they all turn on them, thinking like, it couldn't have been us that's wrong, and it was you who were wrong, sort of thing. So hold on, so let me just go back to the chat. So Brian says, I say too much, only slightly. I'd like a tiny sentence example of how knowledge of a weird would affect the game. Where are the levers I can pull? Being just an example. Well, I think the weirds are the weirds are mostly like if you were to look at this, if I'm going to put this in a like Christian Catholic kind of Christian back point, right? The greater gods, they do not interfere very much, if at all. Like most of their power is spent, the large part of it, in keeping out the forlorn. Like that's their fight. So the weirds would be those kind of lesser gods in a sense, but like your saints. So the when you get into these different, if I was going to rewrite this this scenario, then Dilatus would be a weird. This where did I have it? Dilatus, the goddess of the harvest, would probably be a weird kind of thing. So, yep, it definitely got needful thinged for sure. So a lot of most of the kind of the spirits are I mean, the thing is, and here too, like it's there's some fuzziness here, right? Which again, I don't have an adventure or something to share where I could kind of explain it, but like there's like this is what the very wise know. It's kind of like you're in a sense kind of what your GM information, like you're the people on the ground, I guess. Really to go back here, so the local goddess of the harvest, Dilatus, the goddess of the harvest, could be a weird, could be a boggart, could be something else. This high priestess maybe doesn't know, but that's who they affirm. It's probably not the greater god, because the greater gods are kind of above that sort of thing. They're kind of locked in this keeping the ring, but they've invested other things with their power. Kind of like in the Lord of the Rings sense, right? Morgoth invested his power into the world, basically making it, marring it, right? The marring of Arda, because he poured some of his power in there. So there's little bits of Melkor and all of Arda, or Sauron pouring his essence into the ring. The greater gods have kind of poured a lot of their ongoing essence into maintaining this thing to try to keep things safe. And but there are other things in there. There are other, I'm trying to keep it open, right? They're not the only things in the universe. They're not whatever, but that's what they're doing. The Forlorn's out there trying to kind of puncture holes in this because he wants to snuff out. It wants to snuff out the last bits of creation, and that's where the embers are, right? The embers of creation are inside of Arth. So that's kind of wanting to get at it. So as a GM, if I had if I was putting the GM information for this particular person, I say, oh yeah, Dialatus, yeah, she's a weird. She says what she is, and she's all about the harvest and things like that. Or it could be, nope, she's actually a boggart who is whatever doing it, or it could be somebody else. The the other things tend not to be after it. Like there are only certain creatures who are able to channel this kind of this soul spiritual kind of connection. Not everything can do that. So maybe if a creature is not really actively able to feed off of it, it probably wouldn't desire it unless it just wanted to be loved like that. It would be kind of a lie, I guess, if you wanted to have that, like this goddess is a fraud. Like, yeah, you probably could have that if it just wanted to be adored, but it couldn't actually do the things it could do. Or maybe it could do some things, but it's not actually channeling sparks. Because the thing is I'm thinking of, which is a little bit down the line, is the kind of the creation stuff. Like in this setting, if I ever got around to doing spells, you wouldn't have create water. Like that is a godly thing. That is like you are channeling creation to create water. That is a crazy, even though, well, it's just water. It's like, no, this is not. I mean, here in Castles of Crusades, it's a level 0 spell, I think, create water. And in this setting, that is super strong because you are creating water. I mean, if the spell's doing what it says, as opposed to like taking moisture in the air and causing it to, to go from gas to a liquid, change states. All right. But, creating water, that's crazy strong. Whereas, so, that's what sets apart the kind of divine. If you're a divine creature, you have divine powers, you're able to do that stuff. That is God stuff, or at least, what we're calling kind of God. So that's your divine stuff. Literal creation. That kind of takes sparks, which is why when I mentioned about thaumaturgy, which I'll probably just take out, right? That's God stuff. You'd be able to work miracles, essentially kind of creating things or whatever. That's crazy. That's your big boy stuff. What people are doing is more sorcery, which is essentially able to kind of channel beyond stuff, which is kind of this like crazy, just like Play-Doh. Oh, look, you can kind of do what you want, but it's also kind of fake like that. Like it's not real. You can kind of, if you've seen kind of like it's the kind of stuff that you'd see like in Spirited Away when the no face, I think it makes the coin, like it starts bringing gold out of its, like, I don't know, cloak body. It's like, look, here's some gold, take some more gold. Everybody have gold. And then when he leaves, it all just turns to rocks. Like that's sorcery. You're not, that sort of actual, transmutation is kind of part of that. I mean, maybe there'd be a way to do it. I haven't thought through a whole magic system, but that's kind of that situation. Rob says, it sounds like it can. On the other hand, when you say I'm setting up a typical, it's not like you were just renaming a bunch of things, and I would dislike that. Well, I think there are reasons for renaming it. See, I actually feel like that people depend on the same namings of things a bit too much. It's fine if I just want to have elves be elves. You know what I mean? If my elves are just elves, like I'm not doing anything to them, that's elves. I'm not gonna have elves. So I think you should call them elves. Why not? But oftentimes it is easier, or maybe it's sort of like that. So the problem is when you start to deviate more and more, then you have to start trying to foresee where everyone's versions of elves, like how much do I need to explain? If I'm going to make an elf that's somewhat different from elves, but it still has some elf-like things, like at what point do I need to, where do I keep saying, but okay, they're elves, but, and do the list of buts. If it's just one or two things, well, they're elves, but they have, I don't know, square ears instead of pointed ears. Like, okay, they're elves, but they actually hate the trees. Okay. But after a little while, if I got to keep doing exceptions to them, I would rather just have a new thing. Because I think if you're going to be playing this kind of setting and you're going to invest any time into it, I think you're going to pick up on it. And by giving it a new thing, I don't have to worry about what people's visions of elves. I'm not calling it fairy. If I called the Yond fairy, then I would have to spend an inordinate amount of time potentially saying, but it's not like this, or I don't even know if there even is one version of what fairy is. It's like, it's fairy, but it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Oh, but it's also not this, it's also not that, and it's this other thing instead. Why do all that when I can just name it my own thing, and then I have complete and utter command over what it is or what it isn't, because I'm giving it to you from scratch. And you might look at it and say, oh, it's kind of like fairy, and I can say, well, yeah, it is kind of like fairy, but it's not, and I'm calling it fairy specifically for that. I think if you want to say, well, if it walks like a dwarf and talks like a dwarf, then it's a dwarf. I think that's a fair point, but I also think that it's fun to give things different names. Why does everything have to be a dwarf? Like, why, if it's short in stature, does it have to be dwarf? Why can't it be its own thing? And if I want to create it a thing of its own, like if you call something a dwarf, you're never going to escape the shadow of essentially of Tolkien dwarfs. Good luck. Good luck trying to escape the shadow of Tolkien dwarfs. And some games will do things, and sometimes they'll. I think there was there's that quote. I think it was, who was it that did it? Was it? It's a famous quote about Tolkien. It was like, there are a couple of ways that, and I'm paraphrasing. There's a couple of ways you can, like, Tolkien's like Mount Fuji in like traditional Japanese art. Like, you can either be looking at it this way, you can be looking at it that way, or you can be kind of looking at it another way because you're on Fuji and you're looking at it. But basically, Mount Fuji's in your painting, in your art. It's just a matter of either you're deliberately excluding Mount Fuji because you want to say something about that, either you're looking at Fuji or you're on top of Fuji looking out. Like, those are kind of your options, but implied in everything you're doing is Mount Fuji kind of thing, right? And I think the same thing with something like a dwarf. You can say, oh yeah, but our dwarves are like this, or okay, but you're still playing on that. Like, I'm going to pick the opposite of what Tolkien dwarves are like. It's like, great, but you're still interacting with that. Whereas if you want to escape entirely, the only way you could do that is to not bring up dwarves in the first place. Bring up something else, and then people might say, but it's like a dwarf. You say, yeah, but it's not a dwarf because I didn't even call it that. You're making that thing, not me. So I would disagree with. I can't disagree with you just saying, well, I don't like it because it's just renamed. But I would say, like, I don't know. I would never throw something out and say, nope, don't like it because they renamed something. I was thinking about, well, I would want to think about, well, why are they renaming it? Why are you not using elf if it's an elf? And obviously you're doing that because you want to say something different, or you want to escape from certain preconceptions about whatever. Hey, Glitch, welcome back. Ryan says fairy equals Tinkerbell, I think, is the most common in my orbit. Yeah, it's definitely right. Yeah, it's going to depend a lot on what. I think that's why people use Fae, either F-A-E or F-E-Y, because that usually has a different connotation, different thing than fairy. And it's hard to escape. So I'm kind of using weirds for sort of your good, like a good elf would probably be a weird, an evil elf would be a boggart. But like, the idea here is that the Yond could have all the kind of crazy fantasy stuff, whatever you want, can come from the Yond, because the Yond is all, it's like still kind of like this big sort of, well, it was like a dreamscape. It really is like a dreamscape. Brian says, I appreciate the shared starting point that those classic fantasy creatures get us on. At least it's a place to start. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think at a certain point you go, maybe like, hey, okay, we've done that. Now let's, like, what else is out there? I think it's kind of like, science fiction, I think, is a lot like that too, where you might start reading about aliens that are kind of the aliens from, the Greys or whatever, and then you start reading more and more sci-fi, and people are like, that's like ready to move on to something else. But yes, they are. If you're just doing a one shot or something, or if I was running a con game, even, or a game at a a gaming shop, I think where it's your at least to start, or you don't have any kind of dedicated crew, having those archetypes, having those tropes on your side is the best thing you can do. Hey, dwarves are basically like dwarves, right? But I think you can always make. I think the thing is you can always make that comparison for someone if they need it. Oh, like, hey, this is a boggart. And like, oh, what's a boggart? Well, an evil spirit or a djinn or something like, yeah, the boggarts are kind of like that, right? So you can kind of have it and eat it too, or not having you can have those comparisons. They don't have to, but if you just call something a djinn, then you're kind of locked in. You're locked into that, and you can make exceptions all you want. People are like, ha ha ha, my dwarves live in the sea and they're whatever. It's like, okay, but then, like, A, at that point, why are you calling them dwarves? Or B, you're doing that. You're being anti to be anti, which I think I probably have more of a problem with when you're like, I'm going to change all the tropes. I'm going to flip them all on their heads just kind of to do it. And it's like, well, why? Why? If you're not going to use dwarf at all, other than to be kind of your anti starting point, then why are you even using the name at all? Like, that would be kind of more where I come in on that. Let's see. Brian says, we just started the MCDM game and all the ancestors are unique names and I have no idea what is what. Yes. Right. There is that. Yep. And I think, well, let me take a sip of water here. That is certainly a counterpoint, right? Are you losing everybody in this thing that you're doing? And the answer is, yeah, maybe. You definitely are going from like, well, I'm going to be able to get everybody and I don't have to worry about it versus, okay, now I got to work it in there. And this is kind of where I try to balance what I'm giving you. Like in my thing, in terms of new concepts, right? Arth, which is the name of like, and it's supposed to be like Earth, Arth, right? Haha, Earth, Arth. Yeah, got it. Right. Easy peasy, right? That to me, that's like, okay, yeah, that's where you are. You're on Earth. All right, great. The Yond, if I think is a new concept, the Void, it's the trope of this is your, the whatever the Forlorn is, that's your kind of Cthulhian crazy thing out there in the darkness sort of thing that wants to just destroy. So I think that's, that can go without saying. Gods, okay, got that. Spark, soul, I think we kind of got that. Magic. I think I'm looking at like what are the new things I'm introducing are really two things. It's really the Yond and then these concept of underneath the Yond of the Yonderkin, which are can be of maybe have like Yonderkin and then these two things. So I feel like I'm introducing basically three things in general. Other than that, then it's just going to be creatures. Oh, you see anything, giants, ogres, whatever you want to call, if we give them different names or the same names, those are all like Yonderkin. That's just it's basically because in this conception, all the monster quote unquote, whatever stuff is all from the Yond. Arth, if it was just left to its own devices, would essentially be kind of Earth normal, more or less. Maybe you have cave bears and you got bigger things. Maybe there's dinosaurs somewhere, whatever. But it's more or less kind of Earth normal. Maybe all mushed together all the different eras, so you can get all kinds of giant, crazy creatures and things like that. But Earth normal. All the kind of other stuff. Your goblins, if you've got them, orcs, if you've got them, giants, whatever. I was thinking of dragons might actually be more cosmic, but I haven't got that totally settled. But basically everything outside of that and other than kind of cosmic forces that can be, again, whatever, all kind of Yonderkin. So my hope is that I'm not introducing all that much. But again, that's kind of why I'm wondering, or why I asked the question of like, well, is it, because I don't want to force feed a whole bunch of stuff. This, I would say, it's really the GM that kind of going to need these things. And then you can just fold some of the stuff in play. And if you want to use elves, you can. There's no reason why I'm just not I'm not particularly calling out elves as a thing. I just wanted to do something different. I didn't want to have elves and dwarves. Just want to do something different. But you certainly could have those folks in there. So yeah, it is definitely a balancing point. I think with thing of something like MCDM, I think the concept is that you're really embedding yourself in the system. You're not playing this as a one shot or something, right? You're playing this. This is the thing, right? They're giving you kind of rules and setting kind of wrapped into one, much like 5th edition does or Pathfinder does, and you have to kind of learn. And if you really want to know it, you got to learn the lingo, much like in other games. So I'm certainly not against. I'm not against it, but it can feel like a ton to start off with. Like I said, I'm with this part. It really is supposed to be just a primer, and it's supposed to be kind of background that is easy enough for a GM, referee to pick up and run with, so that when stuff shows up in the game and they need to, and they get to the point where they want to explain it. Because, like I said, a lot of this stuff, it's I tried to say at the beginning, this is what by the wise, maybe I shouldn't put very wise, by the few, by the very few wise who actually know this stuff. But it's that thing where I want to have it. You always end up in these things where you want to talk about something, but before you talk about it, you got to talk about these other things before it. And I want to have this certain things about my settings so that I can do certain things, but I need to tell you what they are before I do them. So I don't want to just say things. I want to kind of have this. And so I have these ideas for I want to have, because I want to part of at least this setting. I want to have kind of more of a high fantasy in the original sense of there being kind of a good versus evil. There's sort of this the kind of forlorn and this despairing versus sort of the kind of law, that kind of law chaos dynamic having real sort of teeth to it on a cosmic level. Like, yeah, if you succumb and drop into kind of despair, you let despair drag you into that kind of chaos, and then that kind of has real meaning, And so having a bit of a cosmology, at least that I can point to and say, you don't have to use this, because nothing when you get to keying hexes, other than things being defined as like it's a boggart or it's a weird or it's whatever, like other than that, it's like, yeah, it's basically just you could take out Yonderkin and put in Fey or Fairy or whatever. Like nothing's going to break. Nothing's really going to break. They're strong, powerful creatures are powerful. Other creatures are whatever, and that's fine. But I want this here if you want to have a little bit more for it, I guess. That's kind of where I'm running. But, I mean, it looks like a lot when it's listed, but this, it's a page with pretty good, if I cut out the spacing here, it's like a page of, because this is like a digest page. So this is 8.5, or this is 11 by 8.5. And this is 5.5 by 8.5. So it's really like a page. Like if you was going to put this on an 8.5 by 11 page, it's maybe a page worth of stuff. So it's not a lot. But I do appreciate that Black Marsh obviously doesn't have really any of that. I think it has some. Whoops, that's my thing. I think it has some background just in terms of the area. But if you want to do something different, you kind of have to say somewhere. I have to look at some other games to see what they do, other kind of sending things. I don't know that Wolves Upon the Coast. Let me see if where's my Wolves Upon the Coast stuff? That might be another one to look at. But I think he's going for somewhat of a, well, it's obviously it's got fantastic elements, so it's not just. I'm gonna take a quick look now that I'm thinking about it. Where is my PDF? I think it's here. Sorry. Riveting streaming as I'm looking. Oh, it's not there. Because it's here. Let's see. Release. Let's see. Rolls Upon the Coast, Book 1. Let's see. What does it say? Does it give us any background? Just well, here we have the intro. Your history is gone. It was taken from you, or you from it. You were thralls. Now your master lies dead in the bottom of a raiding vessel equipped for adventure. You are free. It just kind of sets you loose. Some stuff about characters, your equipment, resolution tools, travel, wind, naval encounters. Yeah, it pretty much just gets into the. I don't think it says anything about these. Yeah, I don't think it says anything about the world. And then I know it's got different quick start equipment. Yeah, I don't think, let's see, Ruislip Alban with an double N's. Well, I can zoom off this a bit. Let's see. Does it say anything? Those in the kingdom of Fortu speak Pictish. Those in the kingdoms of Erging and Which speak, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to pronounce that, speak Brythonic. The aristocracy of which speaks Norse. Priests and scholars about Alban speak and write Latin. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it just kind of throws you into essentially Earth-like place that have Norse, so obviously, and Pictish, which are real Earth kind of things. And then we have Druids. So that's another way to do it. Just kind of toss you in and go. I think the reason why I'm feeling like, and maybe I got to amend my thought process on it, which is why I like to stream these things, is that I want certain foundational elements to be established, I guess, is my thought. At least to have it there, this kind of backing of like, well, here's these bits that are going to speak to kind of the world. But maybe I'll get to the end of the day and I don't need it. I was able to write this other piece and, I just kind of threw it out there. It follows everything that I'm going for. It just, I'm not really setting about the world. Like, yeah, that's why I stayed very vague. Like, okay, it's a, where did I talk about it? The malevolent fairy, right? It's not an elf or anything. It's, it's a malevolent fairy. Right. So kind of that's just what that is. And then it's going on doing things. And you see, this is why I like doing this stuff, because maybe that's what I got to do. Is I just write a bunch of these keys. This is obviously more than just a key. It's kind of a key and a adventure hook. And I was actually thinking you could kind of split these up. Have the village, and then you could have this kind of event that happens where this fairy comes through. But yeah, no, it's pretty interesting idea. But so I don't know. But right now I've got this set up. I kind of, yeah, I do like having it though. This is just where you get torn up. This is where you get torn on things, right? This is where at some point, maybe, sometimes you just got to do something and it works, it doesn't work. And then you're like, okay, it doesn't work. And maybe, but you got to do it because you had to kind of get it out of your system. And maybe for me, I have to do this and get it out of my system, and maybe it works. Or maybe I just have to go back and say, hey, you know what? I can do this on a practical level where I'm going to deal with these things, but I'm not going to give you the cosmology, right? The cosmology may exist in my head where here's the true nature of things, but I'm going to use common language and I'm just going to put it out there in terms you understand. And then if we get around to it, we're going to, we'll talk about it. The one thing I kind of liked, again, because part of what I wanted to use, I want to use like yond. I picked specifically because I wanted to have things like beyond and yonder as these kind of words that have a little bit of a heightened meaning in the local diction. So you're saying something is beyond, like, where is it? Like, oh, it's beyond, like it's out there, like, or, it's over yonder kind of has a different sort of meaning. I wanted to kind of play with some words and giving them a little extra oomph. Those different meanings. So then if you say like, oh yeah, it's out yonder, like that's like you're like saying like, yeah, it's out there somewhere, like is like that great beyond, that great, like, where are you? It's like you're in the yond, you're beyond, you're out there. And I want to kind of have some fun playing with some of those, so having those different terms. But I could probably have that anyway. Like I could do like what Lou Gehrig does and just put a simple term like the lands of fairy, are called the yond. Like they call the lands of fairy here the yond. It's not as clean a cut, but maybe it does do like what Brian's kind of mentioning and putting things in more, because I don't want to lose people. Like I don't feel like I'm asking a whole lot with some of these things, because the only ones you're really going to hear maybe often is that stuff with yond, and you're like, yeah. But it could be that I can basically boil all this down, and this will all be what I have behind the scenes. But again, it's a page. So if I put it in there and I'm like, yeah, this is here if you want to know more, then you've got it, but you don't need to. Like, and I can even put a note here. Hey, this isn't necessary. what I'm putting here for you. So maybe that's what I'll do. I'll have it kind of the best of both worlds. I'll have it here, and I'll give folks the opportunity, if they want to just skip it, they can skip it, because it doesn't impact much, but we'll see. But I do want to kind of put out some like hex, some sort of keyed areas a la where is it? A la Black Marsh. And go like, probably, you know, I don't even know if I'd really give a big overview. I don't know. Maybe do you think you need to do? Folks who, if you've played Black Marsh, did you use overview? Because here it's got a whole history section, or a whole thing, but again, not super long, with an overview, and then some of this, I guess, an event. And he's introducing his own thing. Viz, a magical substance. So he's got his own things here. So, all right. Well, the poll says just right. Nobody's saying not enough. So either just right or too much. So great to hear. 3 votes. So two just right, 1 too much, which is fair. And it's not in its final form. I got to figure it out. So it's using, you know, I'm trying to use things that we think about. The idea of the soul as the spirit, as the spark, this kind of creation bit that's only in the mortals of the, because I was trying to think of, one of the things I was trying to think about, the problem I'm trying to solve, the kind of issue I'm looking at. So what makes the prime material plane special? You got all these planes in the multiverse, potentially, like what makes the prime material plane special? And in my case, I'm kind of boiling it down to, you have you have sort of the prime material plane, or Arth, and then you have kind of that Yon that surrounds it. The Yon is kind of all over. And their elemental planes would be out there and other stuff. But the idea is that what makes the primal thing special is that only here are things like real with a capital R, like real, like they still have this like creation thing in it. And that's the other thing I didn't really get to yet, but like looking at like why gems and precious metals are so precious, because they also have some of that in them. Like the stuff here is like capital R real, whereas you can manipulate yonder stuff, yonder matter to deal with it, but it's not the same. It may seem the same. You may go into the Yon and go to some big mountain of the Dwarf King and whatever, but it's not the same. Whereas if that Dwarf King owned a mountain in the prime material plane, then that's for real. And kind of that's part of the thing. You know, I'm trying to sort of communicate with that. But like I said, I'm happy to have read it. Let me know what you think. If you hit the stream at a later time, let me know. Good stuff. Appreciate hanging out. I got a jet. Game on, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye now.